and health are real and urgent responses are needed. Since we believe that regions have an important role to play in the design and implementing response strategies, we would like to listen you on current actions, activities, programs that mitigate the impact of climate change. May I ask?
Could you show the speakers that are not mute, please?
Yeah,
because we can hear somebody.
I think it's Dr. Piscitelli. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also let me remind you that we would like to also jointly try to answer a common question. The question I would like you all to think about and try to help us find an answer to is which are the lessons learned and what could be continued, strengthened and taken forward in the future. So just to remind you that after the presentations, we will have some time for discussions, and after that we will have a 5-minute break and then go back to the plenary. So without wasting further precious time, I would like to introduce the 6 panelists. Liz Green from Wales. We have Dr. Gascio, who is here in the room. We have Dr. Piscitelli from Puglia region in Italy. We have Dr. Klassen from North Rhine-Westphalia. And we have Dr. Anna Tegamar from Vasta Gotland. I hope I didn't misspell too much your names. And so Liz, please, would you like to start? Thank you.
Thanks very much. I've got a presentation which I will show you. Can you see that?
Yes, thank you very much.
Lovely. Lovely. Right. So I'm Liz Green. I work for Public Health Wales and I'm Programme Director of Health Impact Assessment and a consultant public health for policy and international health. And I'm just going to take these few minutes to outline to you the health impact assessment that we've been carrying out on climate change in Wales. It's just a snapshot. It's a work in progress. Although it is finished in a large amount of ways, but I'm just going to share with you some tentative findings and our conclusions and the process that we followed. So the aims of the Climate Change HIA were to actually identify the wider health and well-being impacts on the population in Wales. So whether they be positive or negative, whether they be direct or indirect, but they look through the lens of the wider determinants of health and inequalities. So it's well documented many of the environmental impacts, or environmental health impacts of climate change, but we broadened the scope so that we looked at not only the physical health, but the mental well-being aspects, resilience, and social impacts on the population and a range of vulnerable groups and how it will affect them. And actually, what does that mean in real life? So how could this change people's lives? Wales is a largely rural nation. It's got a few pockets of urbanity, a few big towns. And so it is highly susceptible to things like flooding, we know. But actually, we need to think about heat and excess heat and extreme weather events really much more clearly and about what that actually means so that we can inform and influence policies and plans and decision making as people adapt and respond to climate change, and it can inform our work plans and our work programs going forward. So actually, what did we do? So the scope of the HIA was Wales only. It was very comprehensive and complex, but it had a large participatory element. So there were about 20 interviews. There were 2 stakeholder workshops where we had wide-ranging discussions from a range of sectors and multidisciplines. They were drawn from representatives and advocates of children, young people, housing, society, civil society. And we actually looked, like I said, at the social determinants, and we looked at the positives, the negatives, but also any unintended negative impacts that may arise from adaptation or changes in plans, but also any potential opportunities and sort of co-benefits for health and well-being. So it was evidence-based. We had a systematic literature review, and also we collated 2 case studies to give some very clear examples of how climate change could affect people in some communities in Wales. So it had oversight, we had an advisory group, again, multidisciplinary, lots of different views on that panel. And we aim to publish a set of 4 infographics for next week for COP. And we actually are writing the report as we speak, really. So anticipate it'll probably be January or February of next year that we actually publish our suite of climate change papers. So what did we find? Well, like I said, lots of living environments, environmental health issues. Wales is susceptible to flooding, there are wildfires, we have potential for lots of landslides, but also, you know, heat and heat environments going forward can have an impact on people's health and well-being through their housing and the quality and type of housing that they may have and accommodation and access to it. But also things like infrastructure and, you know, health infrastructure, educational infrastructure. Are schools adapting for climate change, be they flooding or be they heat? Is there shade in a playground? All these kind of things we identified that would have an impact on different populations. Mental well-being, so stress, anxiety, post-traumatic from flooding events in Wales, but also for young people and children, maybe going forward, that stress and anxiety of, well, what's going to happen to us in the future? And also, as I said, Wales is largely a rural nation. So we have large communities that live in isolation. There are lots of farmers, there are fishers. And so what does it mean for occupational groups? You know, can it be positive? Can it be negative? There could be negative impacts for farmers in terms of responding to extreme weather events and how that might impact on food security for Wales and food production or food safety, but also there could be opportunities for new models of work for farmers and agrarian.
Sorry, Liz.
I'm going to finish now.
Thank you.
I'm about to finish. So key themes that we found is majorly mostly negative impacts in the short to long term, but there are some moderate to major opportunities, as I said, and some opportunities for co-benefits around active travel or digital working and new ways of new models of working. But also it stressed to us the importance of health integration and a consideration in climate change strategic policies and plans, and the risk of intergenerational justice and a risk of divergence between generations. One final thing is we've also looked at the triple challenge, what we're calling, and we've looked at the commonalities of climate change, COVID and Brexit. And we've just published a report on food security and the impacts of that on Wales. So if you want any more information, there's our website at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you very much. I will give the floor now to Sjors Artsen from the Utrecht province in the Netherlands. Sorry, I didn't mention your name earlier, but the floor is yours now. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. As said, I'm from the provincial government of Utrecht in the Netherlands. I'm here to talk a little bit about collaboration in the light of the challenges posed by climate change and public health. Utrecht is a very densely populated province. It's a highly urbanized province. So the types of challenges that we struggle with are a bit different than, for instance, Wales that we just heard about. What I want to talk about, not necessarily the type of challenges that are posed by climate change and mitigation and adaptation. We know about these: health, heat, water, how to make our living spaces more adaptable, but rather the approach that we take here in Utrecht to face those challenges. And one of the cornerstones really is the idea of cross-sectoral and multi-level governance collaboration. The idea that the issues that we are trying to deal with are so complex and they're so multifaceted and entrenched that we really need all possible stakeholders to join together if we wish to find a solution to them. So the type of collaboration that we see in the province of Utrecht takes two versions. First, there's cross-sectoral collaboration in which we try to get public health partners, health agencies, governments, but also and especially private businesses to work together in sharing data and testing different types of policy interventions so as to establish what is actually effective, but also a multi-level governance approach. In the Dutch system, we've got 3 different levels of decentralized governments. So there's water boards, municipalities, provinces, and then we've got, of course, got the national government and the European level. We really need all of these levels of government to be in communication with each other and work together if we want to deliver on the types of solutions that we've been promising our citizens. So I've got 2 brief examples of these types of collaborations before we move on with this very interesting panel. The first one is the Data and Knowledge Hub, in which public and private partners are able, in an open platform, to share data with each other, and that enables us to test policy interventions in a setting that approximates reality to such a large extent that it really helps to deliver new insights as to the effectiveness of certain policies or services. So by opening it up to the private sector and having them also test different types of services or products they can deliver, it truly enriches the data that we have and the validity that we can get out of it. And the second type of collaboration I'd like to shed some light on is the Health Hub. So within the region, we really try to connect both health practitioners and public health agencies with civil society groups, with different types of government to focus on prevention of health issues, and especially in the sphere of digital health. How can we make citizens more knowledgeable about the challenges that we face, and how can they themselves work in their environment to improve these conditions? So this is very short because there's a very interesting panel with different stories, but the case that we're making in this very urbanized area of Utrecht is that to face the challenges that we're talking about here today, you need all these different stakeholders from different platforms, and you need to rethink how you want to collaborate in a very open environment. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much, George, for your presentation. I would like to hand the floor now to Professor Gasho, which was with us earlier. He's in the next room. I hope he hears me. Professor Gasho, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Professor Gasho, do you hear us? Okay, if he doesn't hear, then please go to the next speaker. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then let's hear from Dr. Piscitelli in Puglia.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we hear you.
Okay. Do you have also my slides? Okay.
Yes, we see them. Mm-hmm. Super.
Thanks. So this first slide was made for a conference we held as a Region Apulia at the European Parliament in June 2020, and it was about the case study of Taranto. Of course, it is a well-known story all over Europe. It is a city which hosts a very big industrial plant for steel production. And I thank, of course, the President of Apulia, Mr. Michele Emiliano, and the Head of Cabinet, Claudio Stefanazzi, to have delegated me to participate. I'd like to start with the precautionary principle as medical doctor and epidemiologist, stated in the EU treaties, just to say that it has to be applied also to the air we breathe, which is usually plenty of different pollutants originating by several sources. But what we have to say is also that air pollution is a very recent issue. This is the first press release of WHO June 2012, and then we have some on 2013, and then we have WHO addressing the issue in a comprehensive way only in May 2015. So it is a really recent issue. In 2016, the European Environmental Agency has found out that more than 500,000 deaths each year in Europe are due to air pollution, and almost 80,000 in Italy, with a lot of economic costs, more than 20 billion per year in direct costs, as health impacts more than 400 premature deaths each year. You know, I am a medical doctor, so I'd like to spend a minute on the epigenetic perspective of air pollution. So pollution is not a problem of the current generation, because the prenatal exposure to chemical carcinogens has effect on subsequent generations, and this was really pioneeristically drawn down by Lorenzo Tomatis, the founder of the IARC, International Agency on Cancer Research, which has classified only recently air pollutants, PM10, PM2.5, so particulate matter, as human carcinogens, class 1 IARC. So we have discovered that exposure to the pollutants and also air pollutants really succeed in interacting with our genetic, or better, epigenetic epigenome in our cells, activating or inactivating some genes that facilitate on the
we lost
on the
you for a few
transgeneration transmission of a carcinogenic risk. And we know that there are evidence about atmospheric carcinogens and childhood cancers. So we have a lot of scientific evidence that tell us that air pollution is bad for our health. This is a very interesting study about the presence of nanoparticles of iron in human brain in cities of Manchester and Mexico City. And we have evidence in Italy that people living in polluted areas have a worse condition of health. So Taranto in Apulia, but also other areas such as Brindisi, a part of Bari and Manfredonia, are inserted in these 46 areas with pollution problems in Italy, where it has been documented an increase of risk of cancer, but not only of cancer, even in young people from 0 to 24 years old, and also in hospitalization for several diseases such as lung diseases or cardiac diseases. The Taranto case study relies on this very big plant. The steel plant of Taranto is bigger than the same city of Taranto, which is a really nice and beautiful city. But behind the city, in the 60s, it has been located, this industrial plant, that has been classified at 18th place among the industrial plants originating most environmental and healthcare damages in Europe, estimated between 536 and 700 million euros per year. Until recent years, maybe not now because the production has been reduced, the steel plant of Taranto was emitting 96 grams per year of dioxin. Namely, it was 92% of dioxin produced in Italy by industrial plants. And there are some evidences and scientific studies indicating that children living in Taranto were inhalating and were ingested.
Prisco,
Yeah.
scusami, c'è rimasto meno di un minuto. Grazie.
Yes, of course. No, I am going just to the final part of the presentation. So, as you see in these graphs, Apulia is at the top among the Italian region for the emission of a lot of pollutants and we have a lot of medical evidence and scientific evidence concerning the health inequalities that affect the city of Taranto and that are in line with the trends of steel production, even on mortality per neighborhood. And this data has been recently confirmed by a study where I have participated in as excess of overall mortality in the latest 10 years. My last slide is about where are we going, and with the president of Region Apulia, Michele Emiliano, we have published on the Lancet Planetary Health some articles calling for the European Green Deal initiatives, decarbonization program, and initiative under the Just Transition Fund. Thanks really to everybody for the involvement of all of us in the primary prevention, which is the key to protect public health. Really, thanks to everybody. Thanks, Bettina.
Thanks very much.
Yes, thank you, Prisco. Is Dr. Gascio available to talk now? Okay, good. So let's hear from him now. Thank you.
You need to unmute.
You have to push the micro, to switch on the microphone.
Microphone. Huh? Chi è dopo? Okay. If it's yet, no. Professor Gascio, if it is not yet working, I suggest I move over to Thomas Klassen, and then I will give you the floor again. Is this okay? Spasiba. Thomas, can you
Bettina, can you hear us now? Can we do? Yes?
Yeah, now you, yes, we hear you
Okay.
now. So thanks, Spasiba. Okay, just a moment, Thomas. Professor Gascio, please, the floor is yours.
Да, если наконец меня слышно, что я очень
So
рад
if you
вас
finally can hear me, I'm really happy and I'm very glad to see you.
Москва уже рассказывала о
Moscow
своих,
has presented
шагах, о своих
its
достижениях.
steps and achievements already.
С вами ощущаем изменения.
When we
Я энергетик,
feel certain changes, I, being an energy man, have to believe numbers and devices. And Moscow has 3 unique systems that work for that goal. The first guarantees energy supply. And Moscow consumes 40 million tons of equivalent natural gas, that is mostly half of Germany, and Moscow has a diverse monitoring system for gas systems that the fuel enters the city and power stations that are located inside the city. The particularity of Moscow is that these stations are within the city because they generate heat, and heat to our homes cannot take long in logistics, and 3,000 stations of cathode protection control these power plants. They control the gas usage and the possible leakages. So gas enters the city and gives heat and electricity. Therefore, the city has a system of special thermal energy meters. All the buildings have special meters to see how much heat enters this or that building and how much is consumed. So we can see how the energy travels around the building, how it is consumed. And the third thing is 60 points of eco monitoring that analyze and control 10 major pollutants in the city, and these points show that the concentration is going down, and it has reached very good indicators that are lower than WHO demands. So we have 3 systems that control, monitor this, and they all show that Moscow is moving towards lowering the negative impact of pollutants. And we have built 60 million square meters of housing. So Moscow has expanded by 20%, and the heat that these buildings demand has not raised even by 1%, because the new buildings are energy efficient and they have special meters to regulate the consumption of heat, and people started consuming less energy, and that is the first stage of energy transformation, and that is a huge achievement, because such a gigantic city as Moscow is hard to stop in its development, but it can make itself more effective and efficient in different levels. So that is the motion that we see, and we see that the amount of fuel that enters the city is lowering as well. So the city is developing, is growing, but energy efficiency has enhanced by 30%. So the fuel entering the city is lowering. Therefore, we have further opportunities, and we have carried out a large research that lasted 18 months on green buildings of Moscow, and the day before yesterday our research was published. I didn't manage to incorporate it into the presentation, I'm sorry, and that was on green buildings of Moscow. 300 buildings are green in Moscow. Some of them do not operate very effectively, part of them work 50-50, and half of them worked very effectively, very well. And there are different buildings that are part of it. That is kindergartens, schools, housing complexes, infrastructure sites, warehouses, infrastructure sites, and trade centers, and they have different indicators of energy efficiency. But the most important thing, my dear friends, is for us to get the way and the mechanism that would be adequate for each type of the building. That is what we mean when we say understanding complexity. When we increase energy efficiency, we have to understand that there are different small components that move along this path differently, and their integration into one complex is diversity that is growing. And we know that diversity growth is the ecosystem motion forward. So I would like to thank you very much for this chance to share my opinion with you. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Dr. Thomas Klassen from North Rhine-Westphalia. Thank you. Thomas, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I hope you can all see my slides.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, okay. So thank you very much. Yeah, I will just show you how in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia, in the western part of Germany with 18 million inhabitants, we try to do some empowerment of public health services in dealing with climate change adaptation strategies as a center for health. And maybe just some starting points before, because we have in Germany a national federal strategy on climate change adaptation in present since 2008, but we had some monitoring reports about the climate change adaptation process from 2015, from 2019, and they showed up with some very great challenges for a combined climate adaptation and public health strategies in Germany. And because of that, there was a decision to adapt the WHO guidance on heat health action plans for Germany, which was launched in 2017. And maybe the most of you are very common with this guidance from 2008 from WHO. But here you can see on this slide that you have some different time horizons for the implementation of 8 core elements for a national heat health action plan, which is not only on a national level, it's on the state level and it's on the municipal level. So from long-term development and planning down to special measures during an acute heat period or heat waves, for example. And we can see that central coordination and interdisciplinary cooperation is relevant and is necessary for bringing this into practice. And here on top, you can see you need a coordinating body. So there is always a question, who is eligible for doing this? Is it the public health sector? Is it the environmental sector? Is it someone else? Is it on a municipal level, maybe someone on the urban development level, for example? And what you can see here is the general population and vulnerable groups, which should always be looked at. So specifically, who is at risk, who is responsible, and this is something which should be done when doing a heat health action plan and when doing climate adaptation strategies. So the State Institute for Public Health in Germany, in North Rhine-Westphalia, the LZG, is in charge to advise the State Ministry of Health and the district health authorities in the topic heat and health as a part of climate change adaptation. So what we did is already in 2007, 2008 that we implemented a website, which is just now updated. So there is always updates, but it will now be updated in a totally new site where you can see that different topics, that different risk groups, for example, are taken into account and can find a lot of information there at the warning system, for example. Then we do qualification measures for district health authorities. We started with this earlier, but especially in 2020, and this was already during the pandemic. So we had to transfer everything in a virtual part. But to date, there are no additional resources for doing this duty at our authority, and climate adaptation in total is a responsibility by the Ministry of Environment. So the Ministry of Health only has the part heat and health in North Rhine-Westphalia, which is very specific. So when we now want to bring heat health action plans into practice in North Rhine-Westphalia, there is a resolution which came up in October 2020 by the Federal Conference of State Health Ministers. And this resolution tells to implement and to monitor heat health action plans on different administration levels. So on the federal agency levels, on the state level, and on a municipality level. And this has to be done during the next 5 years. This is what is written there. So what we do in North Rhine-Westphalia is we have a climate adaptation monitoring report, which is just about to be published. And there is an explicit heat and health section integrated. We have a Climate Adaptation Act for North Rhine-Westphalia, which comes into force in 2022. We have an intersectoral initiative. It's a so-called Joint Action for Environment and Health in North Rhine-Westphalia. It covers up with a master plan activity, which came into place in 2015. And there we have a working group on climate, environmental, and health. So this intersectoral initiative is not only interministerial, is with different stakeholders who take responsibility for climate adaptation in North Rhine-Westphalia. Then we have a dialogue process with different medical associations on climate and health, not only on the state level, but on the federal national level too. And we have now a discussion going on in North Rhine-Westphalia whether we need a specific section for coordination and monitoring of heat health action planning in North Rhine-Westphalia. And maybe this could be placed in the state authority that Odile, Mikkel, who many of you will know, and I are working on. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Thomas. We will go now to the last presentation from Dr. Anna Tegemar from Västra Gotland. So Anna, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So now you see my screen, I believe. Thank you. I will talk about the climate change mitigations actions that we perform in region Västra Götaland as an organization. So what we do as an organization, and what is the race to zero emissions in region Västra Götaland. Our ambitious politicians has set targets towards 2030 that the direct greenhouse gas emissions have decreased by 85%, and with direct we mean transport and energy, and indirect emissions by 50% to 2030. And the main part of this is when we buy products. And we also have a net zero target to 2045. And here we include both direct and indirect emissions. We are also a part of Race to Zero via Healthcare Without Harm, as you've been heard about before today. So what do we do? We have been working for a long time, for example, with fossil-free transports. You see a truck on the picture here, which is green and has a Swedish text that says always sustainability in the tank. This truck drives materials to our hospitals, and it runs on biogas, renewable biogas produced from municipal solid waste and wastewater treatment mainly. And next year we will see a couple of electrical heavy trucks driving these materials. We also have, our organization has about 1,200 cars, light vehicles, both passenger cars and light trucks. And this runs on biogas, renewable biogas, or they are electrical. And to 2030, we have a goal that our 100% of our transport should be fossil free. And we also include ambulances, for example, in this, and work machineries. Another example, we have been working also for a long time with energy consumption issues, and we have been focusing, for example, on ventilation and isolation and so forth. And the biggest challenge for us now is to work with the electricity that goes to the technical equipments in our hospitals, to computers, screens. So therefore we have had different projects the latest years that has been focusing on behavioral changes. So we have been working together with our colleagues in the medical care and such simple things as turning off equipment when you don't use it. And the next step is to demand higher energy efficiency requirements in the procurement process, so when we buy medical equipment to the healthcare. And our goal to 2030 is that the energy consumption should be 50% less per area. Another very important issue when you talk about climate change and mitigation for a health sector is all the products and materials that we buy. And measures that we've been performing is demanding that the material we buy is bio-based. So, for example, plastic bags. All the plastic bags we use are produced from corn and sugarcane, and the medicine cups you see here is from residuals from the forest industry, and we buy about 5 million of this every year. So this was just small examples, but we also have here again a very tough and ambitious goal that the greenhouse gas emissions from products from textile, metal, and plastics should be reduced by 50% in 2030. So my last slide here is focusing a little bit more on the future, what we see in region Västra Götaland, and I believe we see different movements in many other regions in Europe, is that the health and medical care becomes more and more digital. Also, it becomes more close to the patient, and sometimes also more concentrated. And these big changes that happens, we have to include the sustainability development goals, climate change mitigation in these big processes. So the examples I showed you before are like small environmental satellites, and in the future we hope to see the climate change mitigation actions as a part of these big processes to make a real change. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. We are almost running out of time. We have probably something like 5 minutes left. Are there any questions from you on the presentations you heard? Otherwise, Bettina, do you have any comments on this moment?
Yeah, I thought, no, you don't. Sorry, I have to excuse myself, but unfortunately our computer collapsed several times. So that's why we were late in starting, and it looked very chaotic because we were coming in and out because we were running for technology. So my apologies for the glitches created, but I hope it's now a bit better. I thought this is a very important session. And I actually want to ask each of you the following question. Can you give me one single answer on what has been the most, one sentence, not more, or one word, not more, out of what you have been promoting? What has been the most successful? Okay, in terms of benefits for human health. The one single activity, one single action, one single policy, one single whatsoever. Okay, I'll give you 1 minute, 50 seconds to think about. Okay, and now let me start with Thomas, because I think I know his answer. Thomas. Okay, I speak again. I speak again because Prisco tells me he couldn't see. Sorry, he couldn't see my speaking well. What is the most successful? The one single initiative which has been the most successful, and you would like to tell us. So what is top number 10 of all the actions, policies, whatever it is, in one word or maximum one sentence? So I start with Thomas.
Okay, one sentence. Yeah. Maybe it is the intersectoral cooperation, the interministerial cooperation, which is really working well in North Rhine-Westphalia.
Super, super. Number one. Okay, now let me go for whom I see first. Anna, what about you?
Thank you. I would say that it is possible. We have reduced our emissions with 63%, and the biggest, the most important here is the public transport.
Okay. The changes, so to make it concrete, the decarbonization or the public walking and cycling of public transport? Buses, rail, whatever. Yeah.
The public.
Any specific?
The public transportations using electricity and biogas instead of fossil.
Super. Prisco, how did you change Taranto? Are people living
unfortunately, in Taranto, the most important thing, successful thing, it has been the knowledge transfer exchange between researchers and decision makers.
Excellent.
That is ongoing, and that is making the difference. But at regional level in Apulia, the most important is the renewable energy, because Apulia is the...
Stop. One word, one sentence. Super. We take it up the research, policy making, and then renewable energy. Yep. Grazie. Liz, what about you?
An enabling political and policy environment for Wales.
Super. Yours. What about you?
Make sure that public health is not addressed only through government, but also governance, and include public, private stakeholders and academics in policymaking.
So it's not PPP alone?
Indeed.
Okay. I think then I have Professor Gash. There's also this lady. Is she a speaker?
Меня слышно, у меня опять проблема.
Can you hear me or yes? Thank you very much. Well, look, in Moscow there is one peculiarity. Since we have large power stations located in the cities, inevitably they generate heat and energy, and that means that the efficiencies 80%, and actually that provides saving, and that saving provides us an opportunity to provide heat for many cities like us, all Scandinavian cities. So it's a great achievement for large cities located in cold areas, and we are not going to sit idle. We will use different technologies. We will look at experience of Barcelona, Helsinki, Stockholm, and for us it's very important to look at experience in other countries. Thank you, I'm finished.
Exchange of experience and your heating system and electricity system we will be adding. Do I miss somebody?
No.
No. Do you have any final comment before we wrap up? Okay, can you tell me between 0 and 10, 10 maximum, has this small session been interesting? Just write in the chat. Okay, now we reconvene. There is a message from 8. Yeah, I think so, more than 10. Wow. Now we reconvene in the plenary. As explained before, just go back to the same link, the plenary link from before. We will see in 5-10 minutes probably in the meeting room again in the other setup. Спасибо большое.